Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Monday, June 23rd, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. The weather in Riverside today will be quite pleasant, with a high reaching 80.1 degrees Fahrenheit and a comfortable low of 61.3 degrees. It's a perfect day to enjoy some time outdoors before the summer heat really sets in. Later in the program, we'll be breaking down a critical international development, focusing on the actual extent of damage following recent U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities and what the implications might be. We'll also turn our attention to a somber event closer to home, investigating what exactly transpired to cause the tragic Lake Tahoe boat incident. All this and more as we continue our broadcast. Stay with us on Alex's News. Welcome back. We begin this morning with a rapidly developing and deeply concerning situation in the Middle East. Just days ago, the United States launched unprecedented military strikes against Iran's nuclear facilities, a move that has sent shockwaves across the globe and significantly escalated regional tensions. For more on this critical story, we turn to our national security reporter, Ethan. Ethan, this is a major escalation. Tell us about what happened.
Grace, it certainly is. We are talking about Operation Midnight Hammer, the code name for the U.S. military strikes that occurred on Sunday, June 21st and 22nd, just over the weekend. These attacks were publicly announced by then-President Donald Trump, who, according to the Hindustan Times, declared them a, quote, spectacular military success, claiming Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. BBC News confirms the Pentagon stated these strikes were in full coordination with Israel.
That sounds like a very precise and powerful operation. Which facilities were targeted, and what exactly does obliterated mean in this context?
Well, Grace, the targeted facilities, confirmed by Iran's state-run IRNA news agency and the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran to The Guardian, were Iran's Fordo, Isfahan, and Natanz nuclear sites. To give you an idea of the scale, this highly coordinated operation involved more than 125 U.S. military aircraft, including 7 B-2 Spirit stealth bombers. These bombers flew an 18-hour mission all the way from the U.S., employing decoy tactics to ensure tactical surprise, according to BBC News and The Guardian.
18 hours? That's quite the journey for what sounds like a very specific delivery. How were they able to penetrate such fortified sites?
That's where the specific weaponry comes in, Grace. U.S. and Israeli officials, as cited by the Hindustan Times, emphasized that American stealth bombers and 30,000-pound, or 13,600-kilogram, bunker-buster bombs offered the best chance of destroying these heavily fortified Iranian nuclear sites, many of which are buried deep underground. The Fordo site, for example, is believed to be deeper than the Channel Tunnel, according to BBC News. These bombs are massive ordnance penetrators, or MOPs, and the U.S. alone possesses them. The mission sequence began with Tomahawk cruise missiles, launched from a U.S. submarine at Isfahan before the bombers entered Iranian airspace.
So a multi-stage attack starting with cruise missiles. What happened then, particularly at Fordo?
After the initial missile strike, the lead B-2 bomber dropped 2 GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrators on the Fordo site, with a total of 14 MOPs used across 2 target areas, BBC News reported. The Guardian specified that 12 13,600-kilogram MOPs were used at Fordo, noting this was their first operational use, which suggests the U.S. had little confidence that fewer bombs would get the job done. In total, 75 precision-guided weapons were used, delivering a combined 420,000 pounds of explosives, according to BBC News and Newsweek. All 3 targets were reportedly hit between 1840 Eastern Time and 1905 Eastern Time.
And what was the stated objective of this immense show of force? Was it an immediate reaction to the recent Israeli strikes?
Not at all, Grace. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth stated the mission was not aimed at regime change or targeting Iranian troops or people, but at neutralizing Iran's nuclear ambitions, according to BBC News. Military analysis from sources like Swaraj Magazine and Chatham House indicates that Operation Midnight Hammer was not a rapid response to the Israeli strikes that began on June 13th. Rather, it was the execution of a pre-existing long-term contingency plan that had been years in the making and required months and weeks of positioning and preparation. Axios, cited by Swaraja magazine, reports that the Israeli attacks were a coordinated trigger to neutralize specific Iranian air defense systems, clearing a safe corridor for the incoming B-2 bombers. It truly was a hammer falling after a long, nail-biting wait.
That puts a very different spin on things. But after such a monumental attack, there are conflicting reports on the damage. What's the true picture emerging?
That's the million-dollar question, Grace. Initial U.S. assessments, as General Dan Kane stated to BBC News and CBS News, claimed extremely severe damage and destruction, though he conceded a full assessment would take time. President Trump famously asserted that Iran's, quotes, key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated, as CBS News reported. However, Iran has strongly contested these claims. Iranian officials confirmed the strikes but denied suffering a, quote, major blow, asserting they had evacuated the sites and moved materials a while ago. An Iranian lawmaker even told Al Jazeera that the Fordo site sustained only, quote, superficial damage. The Guardian noted that unusual truck traffic at Fordo days before the strikes suggested material, possibly uranium stockpiles, was moved. Iran also claims to have another secure and invulnerable enrichment site.
So, a classic he said, she said situation. What about independent verification? Has the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, been able to shed any light on the extent of the damage?
The IAEA is indeed trying to piece things together. UN nuclear chief Rafael Grossi of the IAEA stated, according to the Hindustan Times, that no one, including the International Atomic Energy Agency, is in a position to assess the underground damage at Fordo. He later admitted it was difficult to know how much damage had been done at Fordo, though he confirmed it was directly impacted, Kuna and CBS News reported. For Fordo, which is buried deep under the Zagros Mountains, satellite imagery from Maxar Technologies shows significant damage to the mountainside above the facility, with at least 6 large craters consistent with MOP entry points, according to BBC News and the Times of Israel. The Guardian noted that while video showed fire, satellite images were inconclusive, but a prominent ridgeline was altered with rock scarring and bomb craters. Importantly, 2 Israeli officials told the New York Times, cited by The Guardian, that Fordo suffered serious damage but was not completely destroyed. Entrances to tunnels at the site do appear to be blocked, according to independent.co.uk.
And what about the other sites, Natanz and Isfahan?
Natanz, which had previously suffered from Israeli strikes, was targeted again. Satellite images, according to The Guardian and AP News, showed fresh damage to overground buildings and new cratering, with one crater approximately 5.5 meters in diameter visible directly above the underground complex. IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi confirmed to CBS News and independent.co.uk that the above-ground pilot fuel enrichment plant at Natanz was completely destroyed, and its underground halls had suffered a lot from earlier strikes, now with new damage from the U.S. operation. The IAEA also noted a sharp degradation in nuclear safety and security and potential for radiological and chemical contamination within the facility. Isfahan, hit by Tomahawk cruise missiles, had 6 buildings struck, The Guardian reported, and the IAEA confirmed extensive additional damage to several buildings, including some that may have contained nuclear material and a workshop handling contaminated equipment, according to Al Jazeera. Despite all this, both Iranian officials and the IAEA have reported no immediate signs of radioactive contamination or an increase in off-site radiation levels, a small silver lining, if you will.
It sounds like a complex picture, certainly not a clean sweep as some initial claims suggested. What has been Iran's response to these strikes, and how have world leaders reacted?
Grace, within hours of the U.S. strikes, Iran launched a fresh barrage of ballistic missiles, hitting parts of Tel Aviv and Haifa and injuring at least 86 people, according to BBC News. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps claimed responsibility, deploying one of its most advanced missiles, the Khibar Sheikhan, targeting Israel's Ben Gurion International Airport and research facilities, as reported by the Economic Times and Al Jazeera. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian stated the U.S. must receive a response, and the Chief of Staff of the Iranian Armed Forces declared to Al Jazeera that the U.S. had entered the war clearly and directly. Iran has also threatened U.S. military bases across the region and has interfered with GPS signals in the Strait of Hormuz, with official discussions about the possibility of closing that strategically vital waterway, according to CBS News and Al Jazeera.
So, a dangerous game of tit-for-tat has begun. How has the international community responded to this escalation?
The reaction has been one of widespread alarm, Grace. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres called it a dangerous escalation and a, quote, direct threat to international peace and security, warning of a potential spiral of chaos and urging an immediate cessation of hostilities, as reported by BBC News and CBS News. The UK, France, and Germany called for de-escalation while supporting Israel's security. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer called the situation volatile and urged a return to negotiations, according to Sky News. The EU, Saudi Arabia, and Oman urged restraint, with Saudi Arabia expressing deep concern over the strikes as a violation of the sovereignty of Iran, according to BBC News and Al Jazeera. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi called for dialogue and diplomacy, BBC News reported, while Russian politician Dmitry Medvedev criticized Trump for starting a new war. China and Russia strongly condemned the strikes as a violation of international law, stating the attacks would not deter Tehran's nuclear ambitions, Al Jazeera reported. Tehran is also reportedly engaging with India, as globalnews.ca indicates. The situation, Grace, remains incredibly volatile, and the world is anxiously watching.
Ethan, thank you for breaking down what is truly a monumental and potentially pivotal moment in global affairs. We appreciate your insights on this critical story, the first of two we are tracking this morning.
My pleasure, Grace.
Welcome back. We're turning now to a truly tragic situation unfolding on Lake Tahoe, California, where a boating accident has claimed multiple lives. For the latest on this developing story, we go to our reporter, Chloe. Chloe, what can you tell us about this devastating incident?
Grace, it's a heartbreaking situation indeed. On Saturday, June 21st, 2025, just 2 days ago, a 27-foot gold Chris-Craft vessel capsized on Lake Tahoe near D.L. Bliss State Park. This happened around 3 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, during what witnesses described as a sudden and powerful thunderstorm.
A sudden thunderstorm? That sounds incredibly dangerous. What were the conditions like when the boat went over?
The conditions were extreme, Grace. According to WABI-TV and USA Today, initial reports indicated wave heights reaching up to 8 feet and winds of about 30 knots, approximately 35 miles per hour. CBS Sacramento even reported stronger winds, up to 40 to 45 miles per hour. A local boat captain, according to foxweather.com, called it the worst squall he had ever seen, underscoring how unexpected this weather burst was.
An astonishing shift in weather. How many people were aboard, and what's the latest on their status?
There were 10 people on board that Chris-Craft Grace. Tragically, the bodies of 6 adults have been recovered. As of today, Monday, June 23, 2025, their names have not been publicly released, pending notification of next of kin, as emphasized by USA Today. 2 other individuals remain missing, and thankfully, 2 people were successfully rescued and transported to a hospital, as confirmed by WABI-TV.
So search efforts are still ongoing for the 2 missing individuals?
Yes, Grace. The U.S. Coast Guard, along with the El Dorado County Sheriff's Office and other agencies, rapidly initiated search and rescue efforts. However, the U.S. Coast Guard officially suspended their search on Sunday, June 22, 2025, at 10:55 a.m., according to CBS Sacramento. Despite that, the El Dorado County Sheriff's Office has indicated it will continue localized search efforts for the 2 missing persons, as reported by SouthTahoe.com. It's a testament to their persistence.
It certainly is. Now, about the boat itself. a 27-foot gold Chris-Craft. What do we know about this vessel's capacity and design?
The boat was a 27-foot gold Chris-Craft, Grace. While the specific model hasn't been officially released, Chris-Craft manufactures two main 27-foot models. The Launch 27 typically has a manufacturer-stated maximum passenger capacity of 10 people, according to chriscraft.com. The Calypso 27 has a stated maximum capacity of 11 persons. The 10 individuals aboard were within the stated capacity for both.
And what about their design categories in relation to the storm? Can you explain what CE design categories like C for inshore and B for offshore signify, and how they relate to the Lake Tahoe conditions?
Absolutely, Grace. Those categories are crucial. A CE design category, C, like for the Launch 27, is for inshore use, suitable for winds up to 27 knots and wave heights up to about 6.5 feet, as per chriscraft.com. A category, B, vessel, like the Calypso 27, is more robust for offshore conditions, capable of withstanding winds up to 40 knots and wave heights up to about 13 feet, according to sportsmarine.co.nz. The reported Lake Tahoe conditions, with winds of 30 to 45 miles per hour and swells of 6 to 8 feet, would have exceeded the limits for a category, C, vessel. The investigation will assess if the boat was operated within its limits. It's truly a wake-up call about understanding a vessel's capabilities.
That puts the conditions into perspective. Were there any weather warnings issued for Lake Tahoe that day? It seems like this storm really caught people by surprise.
It did, Grace. The National Weather Service in Reno had issued a wind advisory for the Lake Tahoe area on Friday, June 20, 2025, warning of southwest winds up to 45 miles per hour. However, that advisory had actually ended by Saturday morning, according to thetowntalk.com. While the NWS forecast on Saturday morning did mention a chance of, occasional showers and thunderstorms, as reported by modb.com, the severity of the storm that hit around 3 p.m. was much greater and wasn't well modeled, according to sfchronicle.com. It was indeed a sudden, unexpected squall that turned the lake into a treacherous environment.
The lake can be beautiful, but incredibly unforgiving, especially with cold water. What are the dangers of cold water immersion in Lake Tahoe, and does this tragedy fit into any larger pattern of incidents?
You hit the nail on the head, Grace. Lake Tahoe's water temperature, around 59 degrees Fahrenheit, poses a severe risk. The immediate danger isn't hypothermia, but, cold water shock, an involuntary gasp reflex that can lead to immediate drowning, as highlighted by sfchronicle.com. For those who survive the initial shock, there's the, 1-1-0-1, principle, 1 minute to control breathing, 10 minutes of meaningful muscle movement, and roughly 1 hour of consciousness before hypothermia sets in. This tragedy, unfortunately, adds to a concerning history. A San Francisco Chronicle report noted 25 recreational boating fatalities on Lake Tahoe between 2012 and 2021. More recent data from carsonnow.org indicates that in 2020, there were as many as 15 fatalities reported by the South Lake Tahoe Police Department. This incident is another somber chapter in the lake's history of unexpected perils.
It's truly a heartbreaking reminder of nature's power. Chloe, thank you for bringing us those vital details and for shedding light on the complexities of this tragic situation. We appreciate your thorough reporting.
My pleasure, Grace.
Here are some other headlines. We begin in Damascus, where a sacred Sunday service turned into a scene of horror. A suicide bomber attacked the Mar Elias Greek Orthodox Church, killing at least 22 people, including children, and wounding more than 60. Witnesses say a militant opened fire on the congregation of about 350 worshippers before detonating an explosive vest. Syrian authorities are pointing the finger at the Islamic State group for the attack, which the United Nations has condemned as a heinous act, raising fears of resurgent extremist cells in the war-torn nation. Meanwhile, here in the U.S., more than 150 million Americans are feeling the heat from a dangerous and record-shattering heat wave. a massive heat dome has settled over the eastern half of the country, pushing temperatures near or over 100 degrees from the Midwest to the Northeast. The sweltering conditions are offering little relief even at night and are fueling severe thunderstorms. Tragically, in central New York, falling trees during a storm killed 3 people, including twin 6-year-old girls. Cities like Philadelphia have declared heat emergencies, opening cooling centers, as utility companies warn of a major strain on the power grid. In Washington, a GOP-led tax bill is triggering a fierce debate. A provision championed by President Trump would significantly loosen regulations on gun silencers and short-barreled rifles. The measure would remove these items from the stricter National Firearms Act, eliminating a $200 tax and an extra layer of background checks. Supporters, like Georgia Representative and gun store owner Andrew Claude, say the move protects hearing and Second Amendment rights. But Democrats, including Senator Chuck Schumer, are sounding the alarm, arguing it will make it easier for criminals to obtain dangerous weapons. Across the Atlantic, hundreds of protesters marched in The Hague ahead of a high-stakes NATO summit this week. Demonstrators are calling on the alliance to drop NATO, not bombs, urging leaders to invest in healthcare and climate initiatives instead of what they call war policies. Their protest comes as the 32-nation alliance prepares to discuss a controversial U.S. proposal to more than double defense spending targets to 5% of GDP, a move some European leaders have already called unreasonable. And finally, Tesla is hoping to steer through some turbulent times by betting big on robotaxis. Facing a plunge in sales and consumer boycotts, CEO Elon Musk has launched a limited driverless taxi service in Austin, Texas. For a flat fee of $4.20, select users can hail a ride in a Model Y, though a safety monitor is still on board for now. The move is a gamble to give the company a lift, but it faces major headwinds, including skepticism over its technology, federal scrutiny, and established competitors like Google's Waymo, which is already operating in the city. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Sonnet 4.0, Gemini Pro 2.5, Gemini Flash 2.5, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.